Welcome, doctors. We now shift our focus to management, beginning with the foundational medical therapy for atherosclerotic renal artery stenosis. For patients with unilateral disease, aggressive medical therapy is the absolute mandatory first line approach. The drug of choice to control blood pressure here is an angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor or an angiotensin receptor blocker. This directly neutralizes the runaway renin-angiotensin system production that is driving the hypertension. However, you must rigorously monitor these patients. If their glomerular filtration rate abruptly drops, it indicates the efferent constriction was keeping the kidney filtering and that medical therapy is failing. Alongside blood pressure control, diuretics are heavily utilized to manage severe intravascular volume overload. Furthermore, because this is a systemic atherosclerotic disease, you must manage the entire patient. Immediate and permanent tobacco cessation is absolutely mandatory. You must initiate high-intensity statin therapy to actively stabilize the plaques and slow disease progression, and prescribe daily aspirin to prevent acute thrombotic occlusion events. How do we decide when to simply watch the patient versus when to perform an invasive procedure? This balance is critical for your exam. You should strongly favor medical surveillance if the patient's blood pressure is successfully controlled to goal and their renal function remains completely stable over time. Watchful waiting is particularly favored in patients with advanced age, stable baseline renal insufficiency, or those with a high surgical risk profile. You only cross the line into invasive intervention when strict indications are met. Intervention is mandated when medical therapy catastrophically fails. The three absolute indications to operate are rapidly progressive clinical syndromes like recurrent flash pulmonary edema, blood pressure that is entirely refractory to optimal multi-drug therapy, and an unexplained progressive decline in glomerular filtration rate while receiving medical treatment. If the patient is stable on drugs, leave their anatomy alone. When you do decide to intervene on an atherosclerotic lesion, the technique differs completely from fibromuscular dysplasia. For atherosclerotic disease, percutaneous transluminal renal angioplasty must be combined with endovascular stenting. You insert a wire, use a balloon to physically crush the dense calcified plaque outward, and then you absolutely must deploy a permanent metal scaffold to hold the artery open. But here is the critical size rule you must memorize. Physical revascularization is strictly favored only when the intrinsic kidney mass is adequate enough to actually survive and benefit from the restored blood flow. You should only proceed with angioplasty and stenting if the measured kidney size is greater than 8 centimeters. If the kidney is shrunken and severely atrophic, measuring less than 8 centimeters, opening the artery will not restore its function because the tissue is already dead from chronic ischemia. Managing bilateral renal artery stenosis presents a unique hemodynamic crisis with absolute rules you cannot violate. First is the absolute contraindication we discussed earlier. Angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers are heavily contraindicated as primary unsupervised therapy in bilateral disease, BC. Eliminating the necessary efferent constriction will predict a rapid, severe anuric renal failure. The second major concept is the acute thrombosis catastrophe. If the narrowed plaques in a bilateral disease patient suddenly rupture and thrombose entirely, it instantly converts chronic ischemia into acute infarction. The patient will immediately stop producing urine, entering complete anuric failure. This is an absolute surgical emergency. Rescue measures require extremely early massive thrombolytic therapy or open surgical reconstruction of the renal arteries. If you do not restore flow within hours, the kidney tissue dies permanently, committing the patient to lifelong dialysis dependence. In stark contrast to atherosclerotic management, the intervention for fibromuscular dysplasia is remarkably straightforward. The primary therapy is percutaneous transluminal renal angioplasty using a balloon only. Because the dysplastic tissue is pliable and strictly non-calcified, the balloon remodels the artery perfectly under pressure. There is never a need to place a permanent metal stent. The prognosis after this procedure is exceptionally good. By physically restoring high pressure perfusion to the starving kidney, you definitively shut off the juxtaglomerular apparatus renin secretion, effectively curing the severe systemic hypertension. Another massive advantage for these young patients is their complete lack of systemic atherosclerosis. Passing catheters into their aorta carries zero risk of catastrophic atheroembolic showering during the procedure. If a medical PG entrance question describes a young woman who completely discontinues her blood pressure medications following a simple balloon procedure, this should immediately make you think of the definitive cure achieved in fibromuscular dysplasia. We must confront the prognostic reality of revascularization for atherosclerotic disease. This is a highly tested clinical trial paradox. Multiple large scale prospective randomized controlled trials have repeatedly shown absolutely no compelling short term benefit for interventional revascularization over optimal medical therapy in patients with moderate stenosis. Look at the actual outcome statistics. Even when the artery is perfectly opened, tangible functional recovery occurs in only 25% of cases. 50% of patients experience zero change in their kidney function. Tragically, 25% of patients actually suffer a deterioration in renal function due to procedural atheroemboli. However, there is a fascinating clinical pearl here. Paradoxically, patients whose vascular disease affects their entire functioning kidney mass, meaning those with bilateral stenosis, are statistically more likely to see actual functional recovery post stenting than patients with only unilateral disease. Let us synthesize everything into a master management algorithm. You suspect renal artery stenosis based on clinical red flags. You initiate the workup with duplex ultrasonography, followed by advanced imaging if needed. Your diagnosis branches into two paths. If you diagnose fibromuscular dysplasia, you proceed directly to balloon angioplasty alone, which typically leads to a complete cure of the hypertension. If you diagnose atherosclerotic renal artery stenosis, you absolutely must start with mandatory medical therapy consisting of appropriate antihypertensives, high intensity statins, and aspirin. If medical therapy is successful, you place the patient on serial medical surveillance and leave their anatomy alone. If medical therapy fails, presenting as flash pulmonary edema or crashing glomerular filtration rates, you then move to interventional percutaneous angioplasty with stenting, provided the target kidney measures greater than 8 centimeters. Let us consolidate these concepts with a rapid fire recall of the highest yield diagnostic patterns. When you see an angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor given to a patient with bilateral renal artery stenosis, you must instantly recognize the result will be acute anuric renal failure, driven by the critical loss of efferent arterial constriction. If a vignette presents a patient with recurrent flash pulmonary edema but a completely normal echocardiogram, this is highly specific for bilateral renal artery stenosis. Whenever you read the phrase string of beads sign on an angiogram, immediately select fibromuscular dysplasia, link it to medial fibroplasia, and expect the patient to be a young female. Finally, remember your crucial non-invasive threshold. On a duplex ultrasound, a peak systolic velocity greater than 200 centimeters per second strongly predicts a critical occlusion of greater than 60%. Log these rapid associations into your mind.